Gotta do all that again.
Are we away now?
Oh,
are we good now? G'day there, fanatics. Let's start again. Let's start all over again. We won't go into why we started again, but we had to start again.
Officially on the fanatics this time.
We're on the fanatics this time.
Yep.
We had to go.
We had to go.
We had to go.
Anyway, we'll start again. G'day, Lenny here, and I'm with Wally, Will, Michelle, and Gibbo.
Hi guys.
It's Nerd Central here on the Carpet Grass Club tonight, with two of the biggest turf lunatics in the world with us.
Goddesses.
She's still a lunatic.
Yeah.
So, where were we? Talking about F1.
Yep.
That's better. Thank you, Benny Cameron. Benny Cameron's going to lose his mind tonight. Michelle and Will have been practicing big words all day.
Yeah.
Yes.
I was like, unique New York. No.
The new cups are already getting a run.
Yep.
We go with
We've
that.
got ourselves a new little mascot.
We've got
A pot of
actual-
carpet grass
Yeah, just show
on
them.
the bench for all to see. Or
And how's the logo?
the logo,
New logo.
Carpet Grass Club. So, where were we? Oh, we glossed over F1 because we were rubbish.
Yeah. Sorry.
We did a bit of MotoGP because we're going okay there.
Yeah.
We did.
We were just marvelling at how India got knocked out of the 2020
Yeah,
World
that's
Cup.
amazing. We've cracked into the Chickadee chickens. Benny Cameron's bought himself a thesaurus for tonight.
Wow.
So he's fully prepped and ready to go. So
King
we'll start
Lynch.
with
King Lynch is on too.
the new member of the panel tonight. We've got Michelle down the end here. Tell us about yourself.
Well, I suppose, where do I start? I've been in the industry for nearly 30 years. Started out when I was an apprentice greenkeeper when I was 18. Wasn't at all what I wanted to initially do. I actually wanted to be a vet, but I didn't get the scores I needed, so my mum was like, well, you're not staying home, so she enrolled me in a pre-vocational course at TAFE, and I had to do 6 weeks of work experience, and the very last one was I went on a golf course, and I loved it.
Sweet.
So I ended up getting an apprenticeship as a greenkeeper with a local government. So the idea was that I was supposed to move around every, I think it was 6 to 12 months in a different location. And after I had been on a golf course for 12 months and I wanted to stay, and they said, no, you've got to move on. This is the thing, give someone else an opportunity to come in here. And then fortunately for me, the guy who did go in there ended up injuring himself playing footy, and it was summer, and they said, we need someone to come back that knows what they're doing. So I went, you beauty. So I went back again.
Beautiful.
And then they said, well, we don't want her to go again. So they said, we want to take her on as our own apprentice. So they finished my
Switch you over.
apprenticeship and went with
Which
them.
golf club was that?
It's now the Vines of Ranella, and it was originally called the Marina Golf Club
Yep. And where's that?
in Ranella, South Australia.
South Australia. There you go.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
So
it's
you're
just-
South Australia.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you worked at some pretty amazing
We've got to go
golf
there.
courses over the time then.
Yeah, so I started there and did my apprenticeship. I finished a year ahead of schedule.
Oh wow. Yeah.
And because I suppose I was just pushing through and everything that I wanted to do, so they sort of couldn't keep me back. So when I'd finished my certificate, like the trade sort of side of it, they then said, well, there's no point sort of keeping you, like in as an apprentice, because you want to go ahead and do like an advanced certificate, a diploma, and etc. etc. So they said we might as well just sign you off here. So I finished a year ahead of schedule so I could continue on studying. So I did that, and then I stayed there for a bit. I think I stayed there for about 6 years, and in that time then I also started my master's degree through the University of Sydney. So I would sort of fly backwards and forwards,
You
like
two are freaks.
in
Just
2
so you know.
week, in like 2 week blocks to get that done, and that was sort of over 2 years. And it was, I suppose, through that what do they call it? The research thesis was where my love for disease diagnosis came in.
Yeah. Right.
And I suppose, and the love for agronomy, and just really, like not just so it sort of started with an area where I used to see, you know, like a certain disease, which was winter fusarium, like localized, and I wanted to know why is it there. I wasn't just happy with, you know, what the common thing was just spray fungicides, which back then was that PMA, that phenol mercuric acetate, which isn't good stuff.
Speaking of which, there are like bowling greens that are like have been shut but have stayed kind of like there because they can't develop it because of those types of fungicides.
Wasn't that the go with the one along Wynnum Road?
Yeah.
And that's on the left where they wanted to build a high rise and then the development didn't get approved.
Yeah.
This is
It's
also
like
toxic.
right on the river and the soil is too toxic.
I think it was
Wow.
toxic there for a long time, and now it's like become like a social hub. So it's almost like, but it was like initially because the soil was so toxic, it kept that place like, you know, unusable basically. Yeah. And so you did your masters then on, like you had that interest in that area of winter fusarium, and your masters was on that, or it was on a completely different topic though eventually. Like you ended up, or did you worked on other projects while you were at Western or at uni?
No, so I finished when I did that research thesis which was finding out all the different conditions as to, you know, like what was causing it to be worse. So there was the bunker sand, which used to be a lot of used to be like shell grit. So that was sort of increasing the pH. So when I did these like 3 strips, you know, like across from one side of the green to the other, the pH variance was huge from one side through the accumulation of the shell grit.
Because of calcium carbonate?
Yeah.
Yep.
And then not only that, then there was also, you know, like massive differences in also like with salinity.
Yep.
So and when you now have a look with, say like with winter fusarium, there are different ways at which it spreads. So it's more mycelium that spreads in like the higher pH soils, where it's more just spore germination in the acidic soil. So the potential sort of to spread, particularly with mycelium, it tends to be, you know, like that it's a lot faster than it is when it's spores, because the conditions need to be more ideal for longer for the spores to germinate and to produce. So the other thing I then noticed was, I suppose the more I kept looking, the more I was going, oh, I wonder about this, I wonder about this, I wonder about this. And then I thought, well, because there's so much extra sand that's constantly being sort of, you know, like hit up from the bunker, I wonder if that abrasion on the leaf would actually open up enough to, you know, like for introgression of the mycelium to spread. So then I put, you know, like leaf into, like covered it with, it's called Electron scanning microscopy. And you cover it with, you know, like a thin film of gold, and you have a look at the damage to, you know, it was being beamed with all these electrons to have a look at what damage was there, and potentially, once I isolated it, you could isolate it out of those damage. So it was various different reasons that were accumulating to exactly why it was worse around the bunker spray.
So it was like integrated what was causing the disease. It's also integrated how you get back out of, like how to solve that problem then.
Yeah.
And so most of the time when the fanatics send you samples and you analyse them, you don't just give them like a silver bullet, it's like a whole array of things, I'm guessing.
Yeah. So I normally, you know, like once I've worked out exactly sort of like what the disease is there, I work out which ones sort of the primary ones and then what are the secondary ones. So you will always, on the, say, dead and senesced tissue on the leaf, you will always get, you know, like diseases on there. Like that's just natural, and they're actually part of the process of breaking down that organic matter. But you need to first of all work out what, you know, like are the worst ones that's really causing the problem. But then sometimes when you've got that much, you know, like the plant is then sick, you have to then sometimes also control those secondary ones. So that's where I try and find sort of a best fit, you know, fungicide that works for it, and obviously which one, whether you go, you know, systemic or you go contact, depending on the growth and the seasons and things like that. But then I also highlight, I've done a lot of research on various different diseases and what nutrients are associated, you know, like they either increase or decrease that disease. Not only the susceptibility to the plant getting it, but then the severity of the disease if it's got it. So then I give people the opportunity to, you know, without, say for instance, if they haven't done a soil nutrient analysis, they can then actually have a look at that table, and then they can have a look at what products they've got, and they go, well, I am putting out that, and I put out that regularly. None of my fertilisers have got manganese, or none of them have got, you know, boron or something like that. And then it's, you know, they can sort of then get an idea. You know, yes, they can find a product and.
Michelle has Wally on the ropes. I think he might be a goner.
Ben Gary says he's sweating bullets for sure.
Oh yeah. Nah.
So good.
So it's the way that I, ideally.
You had disease tests the other day, but they
I'll send them to Michelle.
They were totally different to the way you do a disease test. Did you want to explain, or you don't have to completely explain your method because that's probably your IP, but do you want to explain to the fanatics what the difference is between the way you work out what diseases are active in someone's lawn versus the standard look at it under a microscope and just call it because that's what you see? Because you mentioned before decaying organic matter, which generally you get in lawn samples.
Yeah.
Like iron.
You'll get any number of things.
Mm-hmm.
So did you want to explain to the fanatics kind of the reason why a disease analysis isn't just a cheap price to pay, but also you're getting them a more clear-cut answer as to what it is? Yeah.
So the majority of I suppose services or that provide disease diagnoses, they generally because of demand and like golf courses, they want the answer yesterday. So they just want to basically do a quick have a look, underneath a microscope, and basically they're looking for spores that they're able to identify. So if there's lots of them, then they'll say for instance, anthracnose is either low, medium or high. And then, they'll say there might be Drusilla, Curvularia, whatever, Germination or whatever. And then they'll just merely by what they can see, there. But I suppose I wasn't happy in just doing that. And that was how I ended up identifying a new disease, was because I not always do diseases produce spores.
Yep.
And just because it's not there at that moment when someone's looking down a microscope, it doesn't mean that it's not necessarily there. So that was where I went, well, what I want to do is sort of go one step further. Yes, it's going to take longer, but you end up with a much clearer picture. And so things like that BF1, so Phyalocephara bamaru, that is one where
Benny called that one.
Yes.
where that they're all grouping them, and calling them ERI, and it really gets on my goat because they all have a name, and on the fungicide, just being ERI, you need to know what they are and when they're actually active, so that when you can apply your fungicides, you're applying them at the right time, and you're being proactive rather than reactive. Because by most of the time, with a lot of them that we are seeing, say coming through like this time of year, so your spring dead spots, your Germination, all of those, that's not, they haven't done all their major damage now. They did all their major damage when your turf was dormant.
Yep.
So whilst the roots are not growing and they're sort of progressing along the roots, they end up infecting a greater part of the roots because the roots weren't growing, because they are a relatively slow pathogen and they've got a low pathogenicity, but because it's not growing, they just continue they continue to take over at a faster rate during that time. And then when they do start to grow, you see these rings and these patches because it's now showing that it was, it's growing and it's sick.
Yeah.
So if you actually knew exactly what you've got, and what, soil, say temperatures to look for, things like, as well, the other one is, say during the winter time, some people, because your turf isn't sort of growing or not growing much, people tend not to water their soil, their lawn. But that drying, desiccating, and then the re-wetting promotes spores.
Yep.
So there is a point of, not, you wouldn't be obviously, watering, say, 2 times a week, that 12 to 15 mils at a time. You wouldn't be doing that. It'd be less because the evapotranspiration's not there. But you still need to maintain a soil moisture.
Of all the samples you get sent, is there any particular grass types? Because it's an interesting one. You get a lot of different species variation. Things are very selective. Like I find some of these new hybrid green cooches that are coming out quite susceptible to disease.
Yep.
Just as a plant. Do you often get blue cooch, or is that a rarity? Like, because I just don't see it getting much disease in.
No, I have not had one sample in the entire time of blue cooch, and I've actually got a combination of of grasses and things at home. This year, occasionally, when I first moved there, because I was only just sort of encouraging it, and coming from the southern states, blue cooch wasn't something that I had a huge amount of experience with. And it was only really when we went to like Singapore, when we started started to get experience with it and actually really having to to get it to go. So now that I have that as a large portion of my lawn, but it's still it would occasionally, say around this time when it starts to get warm, it's pretty prone to leafy diseases.
Yeah, I've got dollar spot everywhere they go.
But it doesn't take much to get rid of it.
Yeah,
and actually last year was the very first year that I didn't have to apply a fungicide, but I did do a soil test for myself, and I kind of went.
Oh, it's good. Yeah.
Do you know why?
Rip one out before.
Is there any precursor as to why you see it less in something like blue cooch? Is it just a function of growth rate, or is it a function of it just handles the humidity better? Like it's just more naturally, it grows more readily in these kinds of environments that are humid, that do get kind of rainfall in warm temperatures. Like, is that just what it's adapted to? Like, is there any underlying reason in your mind?
I would say that it is like that, and I think that the zoysias are of a similar.
Yep.
The comments are flying out.
Only one of those transcribers from the Logan courthouse. No one can keep up.
It's so good.
Money a good there, Spenny.
I reckon Ludacris would have a time keeping up at the moment too.
No,
it's great. It's awesome.
I'm loving it. But
this is just.
But I think
These are the peanuts in the gallery. Like Ben Cameron. No.
Well, you guys don't realise these two used to work together, and
we used to have lengthy conversations about stuff like that all the time. About, have you ever seen this before? But it is an interesting.
Next thing, it's lunch.
It's an interesting thing. Like I was talking about shade tolerance of zoysias the other day, and people present shade tolerance on like how that surface appears. But if you look at like proper, like all the peer-reviewed literature, it's totally about like above ground biomass. So if you can show that like full sun has similar above ground like clipping yields and biomass to something that's in like 80% shade, then you know that it's completely shade tolerant.
Tolerance, yeah.
And that's rarely the case. Like even with buffalo grass and zoysia, I think the reason it appears shade tolerance, I think it's a function of growth rate, and it's also a function of sun angle. Like I think in summertime your sun's higher and the zoysia is actively growing, and then once it goes into like late autumn through winter, it's basically dormant. So, and I've seen it this year on my lawn. Basically, it got no sun from when I laid it, and now there is a shade gradient. So as the sun's coming higher, where the sun has been, it's really healthy, and as it goes back towards the house, like on the southern side, it's less healthy, but it's still starting to grow, and so it's almost like a function of growth rate as to why it's like shade tolerant.
Yeah.
Like it's almost like it takes ages to strip it backwards to see the damage from the shade. But it also takes ages. It might have something
to do with the the plant's use, of carbohydrates.
Yeah.
So the less carbohydrates it's got, it's kind of like if it's growing faster, it's going to utilise it faster.
Yeah,
so
really
therefore,
inefficient.
That's my theory. Yeah.
So for you guys that have just joined us, because a few people dropping in and out, this is Michelle Dickinson, who we always rave about on the Carpet Grass Club. She's finally made the journey from the islands to come and hang out with us for the night, and we're absolutely loving it here on the live stream. Michelle does all of our soil tests for the fanatics if you ever need one.
But not
PM
December.
all us.
She's having time off.
Oh yeah, sorry, I forgot about that. But anyway, we're just so amazingly chuffed to have you guys as part of the fanatics because
my theory on
you
Zoysia
save us.
is by the time it realises it's in the shade, the shade's
The
gone.
winter's already
It's
over.
almost like, oh,
That's my theory. That's my theory. It's like
true.
the panda, like the sloth, the panda or the sloth of the turf world.
Did I tell you about the trial that I ran at Daly's Turf?
Here we go.
So basically, we put this down and we were trialing different starter ferts. And it wasn't so much like the trial itself, it was what happened 10 months after. Like, I took cores. And so the trial went for 6 months. And then we basically left the plots there. But I knew what was what got different nutrition, different rates of N, PK, whatever. And then we fed it evenly like, after the 6 month period. And then we took cores on like heaps of nutrition, bare minimum nutrition, zero nutrition. And even across all the plots, even at 10 months after laying, so it had been planted October, went through full summer, and then plugs were taken August, like late August, there was no rhizomes. Even after that length, full sun, full open, full sun, turf farm, really good soil, like tested really well.
Yeah.
From like the cation exchange point of view, and like even the slam test tested really well. And I think it's exactly that. Like, it takes ages to build a rhizome system, and so I think in the first kind of 2-3 years, you just gotta kind of just let it do its thing. Just trust that eventually it'll become established, and when it does go through stressful periods, it'll have the rhizomes to draw on its carbohydrates, but it probably barely uses them anyway because it's just so slow. Like,
Is that also?
Is that it's time to take? Oh, is that someone saying I can see you on TV?
No, it's Woolworths home delivery. You don't know it tomorrow. Is that also like doing and like establishing on a nutritional program like on Zoysia that you would normally also do for cooch? Because the effects of phosphorus and potassium on a Zoysia are so detrimental to root production.
It's interesting you say that. So there's been some work done at UQ here. Don Locke did it, the fellow that has shade tuff. So some of the fanatics have shade tuff in their yards, and what he found was in their establishment it was like no different an untreated or putting kelp down or putting an NPK fertilizer to just watering it basically for like the first 6 months. So we basically had a gradient of different starter like options. So we had nothing. We had really high nitrogen, high phosphorus, high potassium, basically no phosphorus, no potassium, really small amount of nitrogen and like heaps of trace elements. We had every option basically, and there wasn't too many major differences between untreated and some of the other treatments. And what was clear was like double rates, so like the equivalence of 6 kilos of product as a starter fert per 100 square meters yielded really no difference to putting it out at half that amount, like 3 kilos. There were slight differences though. Where we found differences was in technology. So you could have had something that via analysis was really high NPK, and you're putting out essentially like in soil science, you're putting out a lot of an amount. But that actually yielded less roots than something that you're putting out a really low analysis, but it lasts a really long period of time because it came down to growth rate. Like it's growing really slow, so it can only really senesce small amounts of phosphorus and potassium over long periods of time, so you don't need to put a lot on. So I think I still want to do work on it, but doing more work with like controlled releases like Osmocote type products that deliver over really long periods of time. Conversely, the other way to do it is foliar feeding, really light dosages. But it's still kind of boom and bust, like, and it's hard for a fanatic to do that. So I think there's merit in controlled releases for zoysias and some low nutrient use grasses.
Well, that's why
So, you're right.
when we laid that Sir Graham's lawn earlier in the year, I asked Bob, I was like, what should I do? He said, just put flora underneath it once for the year, and then it won't need to do anything for the whole year.
So it's basically Osmocote 8 to 9 months, but in our climate it lasts a year.
Yep.
And so when you put it down at 6 kilos, which sounds like a lot, but that 6 kilos lasts a year.
Yeah.
And via analysis, it's 1 kilogram of elemental N over the full year.
Yeah.
So much peer-reviewed research. The number that they keep talking about, like even US stuff, not a huge amount done over here, but it's about a kilo.
Yeah.
Or 100 kegs a hectare of N, which is
Yeah.
it's a third of what cooch is.
Yeah. No,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Longevity is
Yeah.
coming. Bad Cameron. Yes.
So what would be some good tips for the home punter, lunatic, to I suppose lessen the chance of getting a disease on their turf?
Probably the most common disease that we get in the fanatics is dollar spot, I would say, especially around this time of the year.
Right.
And the turf types in southeast Queensland where most of the member base is, but obviously there's so many different types, you would know better than me. But yeah, what are the main tips for the fanatics to not be getting disease?
Or limit.
Limit, yeah, that's right.
Yeah. Well, apart from, I suppose, in terms of for the, like the soil, obviously, like compaction or waterlogging, they are probably some of the biggest, cultural practices where you can, be doing, wrong. With the nutrition, it's certainly, a slow release is a lot better. Not having to, fertilise regularly, on a regular basis with a quick upfront.
Yeah.
That quick upfront, it actually structurally sort of weakens the plant because you're forcing it to grow with a sort of luxury consumption. By
so this is also what Wally's saying with the boom and busts. You go up
yeah,
and down.
and it goes when it goes up and down like that, and you're sort of stretching that leaf. The cells elongate as well, and they thin out. So you're making any pathogens that are therefore around for them to say germinate and get that sort of hyphae down into the plant. The weaker the plant is, the easier it's going to get that disease.
Yep.
And then it's also it's more susceptible to even when you mow, the healing of that mow, the cut
line.
yeah, that takes
These
a lot longer as
Sharpen your
well,
blades more.
to be able
rotary.
to heal over. So if that also doesn't heal over, that becomes another entry point for disease to get in. There's, I suppose, the other one is, just because a lawn, is green, and I know people just want, a green lawn, but just because it's green doesn't mean it's necessarily healthy.
Yeah.
It's not all about the nitrogen and pumping it with iron. Some of the soil reports that I've seen come back because people just want it green. They the iron levels are
Off tap.
they are, but the thing is if the iron goes higher, nothing is singular in its effect. So if your iron is really high, it ends up locking up your phosphorus. If you've got it's all that antagonism and interaction between certain elements, and another one I saw, the magnesium was magnesium was through the roof. So if the magnesium is greater than 20%, it starts to make your potassium unavailable, and it's not only in the nutrients, but there's just no room on the cation exchange capacity for you to be able, the soil to be able to retain how much it needs to have. One I saw the other day, it was I think your cation exchange capacity was around 13, but your calcium was at 90%.
Wow.
So there's 10%, 10%.
No broken teeth there.
There's hardly anything
So is that-
left in there.
What's the pH of that?
What was that one? I have a feeling
Was it
that
like
might
calcareous
have
soil or
been the
something?
one. Might have been one that was say from Western Australia.
Yeah,
I have
okay.
a feeling.
Yeah.
And it was around 8.4.
Wow.
That was 8.4 with water. Came down to 7.8.
Still high.
It was still really high.
Yeah.
So most of it, at the beginning, there is no point in putting anything in the soil.
Yep.
You might as well just do foliar feed.
Yep.
And then try and get what what you can to get the pH to come down at least to the point at which some of the nutrients become available.
So
Otherwise, everything they're putting on will be really short-lived in its effect, and you'll just keep putting it on and on and on and on, and it's just an absolute waste. But then it kind of catapult, like makes things worse again, because the higher once one thing gets, then another ends up just becoming locked up.
So fanatics, what Michelle's going over here is pretty much the opposite end of the spectrum to what Wally talks about all the time with research and development of chemical companies, and why they spend so many millions of dollars finding that perfect balance, where Michelle's saying you go out like this, it throws everything out. So they spend millions of dollars on the R&D making sure that that doesn't happen. When fanatics go and throw just a crop fertilizer onto their lawns thinking that it's going to do the right thing, it's totally the opposite, and you end up setting yourself up for failure in a massive way. Whereas you have companies such as the ones that Will works for that spend billions of dollars doing all the research, mining their own materials and making it perfect for that one thing. The proof's in the pudding, sitting right here listening to this tonight.
So we got
crazy.
three good questions just came in. Jordan, sorry if this was discussed already. Well, not really. Well, let's go into it. But gypsum, is it a myth in regards to clay-based soils?
Yes.
Well, the thing is, like with a clay-based soil, what needs to be remembered, that is what it is that gives you structure is your calcium to magnesium ratio. Now, with a clay, that calcium can come from dolomite, so that's calcium magnesium carbonate. It can come from lime, which is just calcium carbonate, or it can come from gypsum. So that calcium to magnesium ratio, if you have a clay soil, that calcium source that you need, it doesn't necessarily come from gypsum.
Yeah.
Whether you have gypsum, or actually sometimes you can need all three. If you need gypsum, you're using gypsum because it's also an element of what your sodium levels are at.
Yep.
Also where your magnesium levels are at. So if your magnesium levels and your calcium to magnesium ratio isn't around that sort of 5 mark, and your magnesium could be too high, you use gypsum because it has the same effect on sort of knocking off magnesium as it does with sodium.
Yeah.
But you can also with your hydrogen. So your hydrogen is being a cation. It also gets retained on your soil structure. And the only thing that will get rid of hydrogen is a liming agent. So then you need to work out, well, what do I need to do here? Like, do I need calcium? Do I need gypsum? So then you work out a balance between, say for instance, you might need a combination of both lime and dolomite to be able to correct your magnesium levels and your calcium. So getting back to the question about, is gypsum, like good for for clays. Sometimes it is, but it's not. It's what you want for your soil for a clay. It's calcium, but that calcium can come from lime, dolomite, or gypsum. Just saying that.
Exchange.
So,
and what's
bloody good question, Jordan. We'll go with the correct response would be get a soil test, so you know.
I didn't want to.
I think the marketing. Say that. I think maybe Jordan's hinting at the marketing perception of the clay breaker. People think that you put gypsum down, it's gonna like break your clay up.
Yeah.
Did you want to explain to the fanatics why that's a bit of marketing? Or I suppose you kind of just did. Like, it's not really essentially gonna break the clay up. But did you want to explain to them why that's not the case?
Well, I think that's marketing of a lot of things. Like whether that they do that, and I suppose what they're trying to do is they're trying to generally, and also find that the rates are normally, well, sometimes like they are a lot less than what some of them are when you've actually had a soil test done. So I've had one recently where like it could be as little as 2 kilos per 100 recommendation. I've had another one where it's been 53 kilos per 100, and it's like, you cannot put enough water out to dissolve it for it to work. So I have to get it to split the applications, up, because otherwise it's just going to sit, all on the top. And gypsum, lime, and dolomite, they're only effective if they dissolve. So there's no point dumping it, because in a month of Sundays you're not going to put that amount of water out. So unless you're incorporating it, in the beginning, but once your lawn is already established,
you can't get that.
You're not going to get that amount of water on, or you'll end up causing disease or some other problem in the meantime by doing that. So they need to, I suppose, for the general home gardener, they just try and find an easy fit that, you know, for some people, you know, like they're not going to recommend for everyone to go out and do 50 kilos. So for some people, if you're putting gypsum on, it's not necessarily working. A, you may not be needing gypsum. B, you actually may not be putting on enough for your soil to be making any difference. But I think at the end of the day, if you really want to actually change your soil, you know, like as your clay, and you need to improve it, you need to look more along the lines of improving your, you know, like organic matter.
Yeah.
That's really important, probably even more so than the gypsum.
So changing the physical characteristics rather than the chemical characteristics.
Yeah.
Or,
yeah. And adding, you know, more sand, you know, like in there over time. So eventually you start to, you know, change your soil by adding in those other, you know, soil
All right, next one.
portions.
Yeah.
Can you apply MAP as a foliar feed? Oh, Anthony.
Yeah.
Anthony.
Yeah,
Yep.
absolutely.
It's
can, but
MAP.
It's a lot of if you look at some of the council areas, even in Australia, use of phosphorus is banned.
Western
and-
Australia, isn't it?
Yeah, there's certain areas, and you look at places in the US during their wet seasons and stuff, use of nitrogen and phosphorus fertilizers is banned. So MAP is really water soluble. Yep, it's going to solubilize easy in a tank, and you'll be able to apply it. But the day that you apply it is the day it's available, and the amount you think you're applying, probably only a really small proportion of that will actually enter the plant. The rest will probably volatilize and it'll go. So it's almost there's technologies out
And
there.
it's good for alkaline soils.
Yeah,
So MAP is good for alkaline soils, DAP is good for acidic soils.
yeah. Depending on pH, it's an option. But there's technologies out there where you can deliver phosphorus over long periods of time. There's rock phosphates, there's slow release phosphoruses, there's controlled release phosphoruses, where you don't even need to foliar feed. And the amount of phosphorus you actually need for turf grass is quite small. Like on a soil test, like it'd be rare that you're recommending to go out with MAP in large volumes ever.
No, I have recommended probably in the last week a couple of people to use MAP.
Yep.
One of them was that one I was talking about from Western Australia.
Yep.
And it's because in the soil it's all locked up anyway, and it was like I didn't need anything else. Potassium was through the roof. I think magnesium was also high.
Yeah.
So I was like, you know, you're kind of
Foliar
limited
feed
to
with
what.
that,
So it was
yeah.
foliar feed, whilst I'm trying to get, you know, like get the pH down. So yeah, so I have done, but it's never anything of. It's only ever like it's less than generally like 200 grams or something, and it's
Which isn't a
it's
lot.
not. It's not
MAP,
kilos.
like that goes quick.
It's- yeah.
There's people commenting saying you guys should have bought a chess clock for tonight. Gary.
Karthik wants to have a quick discussion about ground pearl. If you've got it, sell your house and move.
They don't really have any kind of
Well, there was a fanatic who had ground pearl in his home lawn. I remember it. Yeah.
there's no real. I know that people have dabbled with things like Vetrabac and stupid rates of a lot of insecticides that are banned, but there's nothing that is really registered for it yet.
Well, there was that guy at
I was gonna say,
the
didn't we see
ACMI,
that at
ACMA conference.
ASMA.
But that's fumigation. Remember that guy? But that's
Yeah, but
encasing the whole field, the whole footy field,
Yeah,
or
but
whatever,
that
in a
that's
plastic
if you want to
wire.
reconstruct.
Yeah.
So like you would.
But
if
they
you-
control ground pearl at a bowls club,
Yeah.
Engadine Bowls Club. That's
Yeah.
the one where
Scotty,
ScoMo crappy
Scotty, Stevie
But then
Moody.
the challenge
Stevie
is you've
Moody
got to
had a poo.
resource material from somewhere that you've pretty much got to have little to no ground pearl in, which is in bowling greens is sometimes. If it was like a Tiff Dwarf bowling green, that's a rarity.
Yeah.
Like, I think that's the thing. Like, you can go to the effort to completely sterilising your soil and reconstructing, but they're pretty rife in the bowling green industry. It's rare that you'll go to a green and not find ground pearl in them. They're basically like the mealybug of the soil.
They're,
Like-
they're pretty much impossible to kill. You can see them on like I see in the US they've tried putting, mats down and gassing, putting like methyl bromide and stuff like that into the soil to kill them.
Which is also banned.
But yeah, they're almost like.
I had this thought some time ago.
My chooks have been getting rid of my mealybugs off my lime trees. They've been sitting up and pecking them off.
Oh, really?
There's Chad. Chad's got a question.
No, we've got one up here before from
Chad. Speaking of South Australians,
produce and liquid sunshine in a bottle. We've covered that before. The concept is that it's feeding like a plant sugar rather than photosynthesis.
I think it's got proteins that are like the end chain of like once the plant photosynthesizes. It's also got simple sugars, so it's basically like spraying simple sugar. But then if the turf's not, if it's like not processing properly anyway, uptake's going to be limited, and there's only so much it can actually grow to it.
What's the old saying? If it sounds too good to be true, it probably is.
Yeah.
There's a point to which you can, like, using amino acids, like you can sort of like, force feed plants to take it in, because the amino acids sort of like, like as a chain, grab another nutrient and take it in through the stomata. But if the plant, otherwise, like isn't, if it's not getting sun, like using, no matter what it is, like liquid sunshine, if it's not getting sun, it's not going to grow.
Yeah.
So you can feed it all you like, it's still not going to.
Yeah.
Karthik has just said you don't need Protocin if you have Stress Buster.
Well, no, but Stress Buster, same thing. It's not going to, and we don't make that claim. We don't say it's going to improve the stress. We do say stress tolerances of plants. We don't say shade tolerance at all. But it's got amino acids in it. It's the same concept.
Mm-hmm.
It's like the end. It's the chains that are produced once that plant's photosynthesized. Like they're ready to use. If the plant is actively growing, it'll probably use them. If it's not really growing that well, it's leggy, it's not photosynthesizing properly, it probably doesn't have a big leaf surface area, and the stomata's probably quite shut, it's probably not going to uptake it very well anyway. Yeah.
Chad's got a good question. We're going to see Chad.
Yeah.
At some stage when the border's open.
He's in South Australia, so this is obvious why he's got a pH of around. I think ask Chad, is he like, he must be near like wine country or something.
He's on the peninsula down.
Oh, the Florio Peninsula?
I think that's where I'm from.
I think he's down that way. Cause I think
Chad, you'll have to let us know. I can't remember where you said it was. But
so he's got a pH of around 8.5.
Yeah.
Strategies you'd recommend to mitigate the effects of nutrient uptake at this pH level, other than say elemental sulfur, or would, he's got S there, which is sulfur, but be the best way forward.
York Peninsula.
York Peninsula. There you go.
He's down this way somewhere.
He's over where my
other side this way.
Hang on.
Yeah, it's over where my auntie and uncle are. Yeah.
Well, that's where we're going.
I don't know. Where's we going?
Give that guy. I'm no master.
He won that.
Probably, if
comp.
anything, I'd be looking at obviously chelated trace elements. Using like humic acid or folic acid, they're natural, like chelators. I'd be going more foliar feeds than I would in the soil, because there's too much interaction that happens with the with the soil that ends up just locking it up. So I'd be going foliar feeds, and I'd be using as many sort of acidifying fertilizers as as you could. And just because it's got sulfur doesn't mean that it's acidifying. So, like potassium sulfate has got negligible effect on, on pH. But you could use, say for instance, and I did the other day, I actually used, was using sulfate of ammonia.
Yep. So
sulfate of ammonia is a really good one for, to acidify. I think I also had some mag sulfate in there, but that also doesn't have really an effect on pH either. So it's, that would be my my plan of attack.
I'll tell you all about it when we come visit, Chad.
Actually,
no one's asked him a question yet.
I can get Chad maybe as an extra little gift, because he's won the comp. I should get him what's called our step liquid, because it's got basically all the trace elements collated in one trace element package. It stands for the Scots trace element package from the Scots days. That's just called step liquid.
I've actually seen that.
Someone will
It's a classic.
Someone will talk.
yeah, someone will talk.
Someone will talk about it.
No, this is external of the competition.
It's outside the competition. It's got nothing to do with it. People live in New South Wales.
We're trying to solve a problem here.
Mate, if only tonight every question had 25 words or less, would be right.
But also
Iron brew.
Iron brew.
Oh.
That stuff cures hangovers. Scientifically proven. No.
Dude. Gary.
It's caused a few of mine.
Have you had that? It's like that Scottish drink. It's like flat. It's like, I can't describe it. It's like
Is it
flat.
meat? What is
It's like
it?
flat creaming soda mixed
It's like
with Red
flat
Bull.
creaming soda.
Steak in a glass.
Yeah.
No, it's
Guinness.
it is. That's probably the perfect
Yeah.
explanation. It's kind of
Yeah,
like
probably it is.
flat creaming soda medicine.
They love it.
Yeah.
They love
There
it. in
is
Scotland.
iron brew if it has got high iron.
Hmm.
It'll be send me into the hospital.
No, it's like IRN.
Yeah.
Like urn brew.
It's Scottish.
But I think that's how the urn brew. Gary didn't know how to
Yeah,
pronounce it.
yeah. He speaks another language.
This is what it looks like.
Or
It even
five.
looks just hyperactive.
It's delicious.
Crikey.
Does
So-
anyone have any extra
Any other questions?
questions?
So we sort
I think
of.
they're all just trying to recover for us.
Yeah.
And for that Chad Farrell, the importance also of organic matter
Yeah.
about naturally, like acidifying the soil as well.
Mm. Yeah, so like returning his clippings, but also using some kind of organo-mineral product as well.
So
Compost.
you'll probably get a call from Jordan. He wants to send you a source.
He said that.
You
Is
have
Michelle
to
a
end
pro
the next
support?
week. I'm
Oh,
already
important
saying.
questions
So
coming
Michelle
through
doesn't
now.
watch sport, but
Yeah.
are you a Crows or Port supporter?
I was a Crows supporter.
Yes.
Yeah. And yeah.
Well, you tell us, Michael. With a name like Collingburn, it should be Collingwood.
Here you go. A lot of hype with humic acid lately. So much variability with humic acid that it's hard to conclude what's happening and what isn't. Thoughts?
Oh.
I think what he means is there's so many different types on the market.
There's so much hype about it as well.
Yeah, I suppose it is something that's starting to become more, like people becoming more aware of it because, back in the days when they used to, like burn crops and they used to do stubble, like retention and put it back in, that was where the carbon was coming from.
Are you still doing sugarcane?
Yeah, I see it from my house.
If you've never seen it live, it's pretty amazing to
I love
watch
it,
a
yeah.
cane fire. It's just,
It's
A cane fire.
yeah,
Yeah, it's sort of when I lived in Mackay.
yeah.
They don't do them a huge amount anymore, though.
Yeah, it's not as, I think all the CO2 emissions.
Well, some of my family live in Intersdale, obviously sugarcane up there. And the first time I ever saw one live, the dude's just standing next to it, like putting it out with rags and stuff. I'm like, how are they not dead?
I think they're genuine.
It's mind blowing to see.
But they're so
like,
fast.
Yeah.
Done.
Yep.
But I think from my recollection, they said you get a slightly less sugar content if you don't burn, but if you do burn, you get rid of all the rubbish out of it, so you get a higher sugar percentage, but it drops really dramatically the length of time it's in the paddock. So you got to burn it and get it in
Get it off
straight away.
off.
If you burn it and leave it for a couple of days, that sugar starts going down, that sugar content. So they don't really bother with it. They get a slightly less amount, but it's a consistent amount if they don't do that.
Here's another question from Bradley Fernandez. Granular before or after top dressing?
After.
Well, it depends what you're going to do after you've top dressed. Are you going to screed and drag it around? Because if you're going to put a granular, particularly coated prills, you're going to drag them around. You're going to drag the prills around.
Finish all your
yeah.
smoothing out and then put it on
Uneven
top like the
distribution
icing.
everywhere.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yep. So I think it's...
I learnt that when Wally came to my house because I used to do the opposite, and then he's like, "Why are you doing that?" I never really thought of it.
I put the like depending also on the rates, I get things like like the organic matter, and the gypsum. I put that down before the top dressing, and you just try and sort of get as much as you
gotta
can
get it
down
in.
the core holes, because that's where essentially like it needs to do the job, and particularly those that are using like washed sand, like there's nothing in it. It's got CEC of probably 3,
Yeah, it's inert pretty much.
It doesn't need the amending, so getting it underneath and getting it down the holes, at least it, and particularly I suppose if you're using like a liming agent or something like that, you're better off getting that down the holes, because if it's on the top and it's not, like I was saying before, if it's not wet, then it can't be working. and you can get sort of what is it? You can get with the liming effect, and then if you have, say, lime and then you have a granular fertilizer that goes out together on the top, you know, like the nitrogen, as soon as it sort of becomes, you know, like available, just becomes locked up because of the pH effect. So you're better off having the liming effect, you know, like lime go down the holes. You have your fertilizer on the top, and they'll kind of chase each other down.
The other thing is like same thing. Like it depends on the type of fert. Like if you're gonna put chicken manure pellets down, definitely do it while it's open up and before you're top dressed. But I would say if you're gonna put like a prilled fertilizer that has quite small prills and can get moved around a lot, I would say do it after.
I did it after, and I've had the best results ever so far of a Reno. It's just mind blowing what it's been like this time.
Can I mix Barricade with ICL Blade and Tri-Smart? Yes, you can. Just double check the tank mix, but I could probably check for.
There is a benefit to using
it's more
pre-emergence with a wetting agent, isn't it? It helps push them in it.
It's not so much pushing it in. It basically in the irrigation event. So people think that wetting agents affect your soil. They do to a point that it'll help how the water molecules attach to the particles, but it won't change the way your soil sees water. It more changes the way the water acts. So they're called a surfactant, so surface active agent. And so basically, what like Tri-Smart as an example, what it does is it breaks the hydrogen bonding of the water. So it'll spread a water droplet. By spreading that water droplet, it'll help it spread over further surface area. And then gravity will take care of the rest. And so gravity will take it in, and then the short chain penetrant or short chain polymers in there will help it like push through the particles of the sand, and then it's the humectant or it's like a binding polymer that'll help it attach the particles. So that's essentially like what it does to a water droplet. And so if you mix that in your tank with a pre-emergent, it's basically like
your dispersion is going to be even.
Much more even through your soil profile. So it'll be advantageous, and just double check you can mix blade with it, but I'm pretty certain you can.
Long-term observations on Agridark. Sprigged it last autumn and he's blown away the growing colour. I know that I've said before that ANZ Stadium in Sydney use it, and Bankwest Stadium in Sydney use it as well. And I don't think they've got any testing to go by. It's just anecdotally they feel that of all the green couches, it is more shade tolerant for the stadium turf. So they use it there for that reason.
I remember.
I do like it.
I remember when we were at.
Albie's got it.
Albie likes it.
When we were at STRI, they wanted to commission research. They had a belief that you could leave it, and particularly in a stadium scenario, they reckon that you could leave it under stadium flooring longer than most other couch grasses, because they've done some kind of intermediate covering trials where you cover it, borderline kill it, take your covering off, and it recovers quite rapidly. But I do just wonder that is it just more rhizomatous than some of the other hybrid green couches out there?
So it might have a more of an ability to be able to actually store nutrients.
Albie also likes to cut his Agridark really short, so it's not over his shoulders.
Yeah, he's cutting it like 7mm.
Still no longevity.
Haven't got it out tonight.
So where were we?
Where's the PGR colour?
Tips on PGR for the first time. I have to mow every second day. He loves it. The neighbours might not so much, considering going down the PGR road. He's got Kaiku in southern New South Wales.
Do it.
Oh, he'd do it, mate. And just start at lower rates and build up to a level that you find you
It's either that, or you go down the. It might only be commercially available. I was going to say go down the EC route. You go even a low label rate for that. It lasts like a month, so you don't have to. Your reapplication interval is.
Well, I think they only come in 5 litre drums.
Yeah.
So that's a little bit overkill for.
But if he's in the Southern Highlands, he's probably got land.
Land, lots of land.
Kaiku, that's a dairy farm.
So yeah, mate, do it.
Fertilising too much though too.
Yeah, Kaiku is like so easy. Just show it a bag of fertiliser.
It doesn't need it.
Rip it open, give it a whiff, put it away.
But yeah, down that way, it's probably not massive from a growing degree day point of view. Like you could get on the the Syngenta Greencast app.
Yep.
And they got a calculator for you. You enter your postcode, and it
Yeah.
tells you your reapplication, like the day you apply it, the rate you put out.
Just don't start at 50 mils.
Yeah. No, that's what I would do.
Yeah.
No.
Wally hates mowing that much.
You best to promote root growth for a period of time prior to doing a reno.
Ooh.
Well, we're seeing that trend a little bit lately, in that people feed a week or two prior, probably 2 weeks prior to actually doing their renovation. It's almost like you then have the plant actively growing, or like you give it a kick and it puts
Takes
it in
off
gear,
faster.
and then there is
We could pretty much prove that with mine because we furred the whole thing, but then remember we ran out of sand, and then Lenny came on Friday and top dressed the front. Well, it is already like
It's already through. It was a
98%
beach. It was
coverage,
full on
and we
beach.
like buried it. It's
so.
insane in the membrane.
I think I would hazard a guess. There's probably peer-reviewed literature that talks about this, and it doesn't surprise me that it's almost like you basically got a more active plant heading in, and then when you stress it, so when you cut it down really low, you take a lot of surface material that's a lot of energy for it to photosynthesize away. It's probably starting from a better place than had you not prepared it. So I would say it's probably a good thing. But I will check and see if there's some peer-reviewed literature that actually proves that.
We'll come back to that next week. Tune in.
Yeah.
Johnny can't believe that we didn't get Michelle a fake beard.
She could do it with
I
the
could do it with my
Lolly
beard.
Yeah. Try.
Somehow I thought of it.
What's your favourite type of turf? Your turf variety?
Yeah, pressure's on now. We're going to ask you all like the really personal grass questions.
Well, it actually,
Cover grass.
No.
So you gotta say cover
it
grass.
really just, it depends because, like, it depends on the situation and, like, in which it's being grown. There's no point in trying to,
diplomatic, I love
a
it.
nice, like a nice lawn. I used to not like buffalo because I came from, like a sports background, and you obviously don't use buffalo or anything, so I didn't particularly like it. But then as I've sort of, like, I suppose even more so, like now dealing with, like turf farms and, like home, like situations, then, like experiencing it a bit more, and actually, had experience in the establishment of, like a Sir Walter. And a nice
like a
lawn,
pensioner.
it looks really nice. So in the right situation, like having a turf that's for that,
Purpose.
for that purpose,
Yep.
and it will look nice.
Yep.
There are other ones when you try and have something because you want a fine blade grass, but you only got, say for instance, 2-3 hours of sun, there's no point trying. You can have something you might want, but it's just never gonna look quite right. So
we've seen
like
photos
all
about
of
the
them.
back of your house with your awesome fire pit and the
That's ryegrass out there, isn't it?
the
That's-
Stonehenge looking wood feature.
Yeah.
So what grass is there at the moment? It was rye earlier, but has
It's-
it anything underneath
I've
that?
well, it was SR4660. The heat has actually knocked it around a little bit in the areas where it gets like more sun than the others. So I just bit the bullet and I've sprayed it out, and I've just said I'm going to get Sir Grange zoysia. I'm going to put that around there because it doesn't get maximum sun, and it doesn't get used a lot like until it's the winter. But then when it does come around to winter, I'll increase the wear like ability, and I'll top like, and I'll oversow with rye, so I'll have it still come through. Then I've got other areas as well where I'm now just trialing different grasses because I've got an extra dog.
Yep.
And she's in the winter, the Queensland blue doesn't like the shade in combination with like two big dogs. So I'm just trialing some grasses there. So I'm trialing with it Tiff-Tuff. I'm trialing Empire Zoysia, and what was that? I don't really want to go buffalo out the back.
You just can't do it to yourself.
Nah, I like and then out
Carpet
the
grass, mate.
yeah. And then out the front, well, I've actually just got rid of a whole heap of carpet grass.
Oh.
How are you going to get turn and bounce off the wicket? Yeah.
Was that at Gary's comment? Is that what you're at?
Oh, what did you say?
He said
some sort of drill.
SR4660. Is that what Valentino Rossi used to ride?
It is indeed.
That's on the MCG, isn't it? That's the claim to fame for that ryegrass. I don't know if they've changed it, but it used to be. That used to be like what the main rye on the G was for.
Jordan currently has a soil test in with Michelle. He can't wait for the results. Jordan Templar.
Yeah, he has. I received that. Yeah, I received that. I think it was yesterday. Yeah, I did.
Good stuff.
So Ben Sims mix.
You won't get your results because she's here with us.
But
No, it takes
So-
a bit, yeah.
different turfs, different scenarios. But you've got to have a favourite. You've got to have one that you go, gee, I
Cut
love.
to the chase.
No, I just
Yeah.
love the colour
Stop
of it.
it. Get off
I love
the
that.
fence. You'll get
I-
bloody
I-
splinters in your bum.
I love the structure of it, of the plant itself. Love the colour. We've all got a favourite. I've got a favourite.
I am the favourite child.
Got to have one.
Just
something.
Well, I'd probably say, like, if you could keep ryegrass going all the time,
Yeah.
I love the colour, I
Yeah.
love the soft, you lay on it and it just
Yeah.
feels like an absolute
I
cushion.
don't like the smell when you cut it.
Don't you?
No.
Really?
It's so sweet.
No.
Smell
Yeah.
like lollies.
Will, you are a bona fide freak, honestly.
Ryegrass does look nice and it stripes up really, really
Oh,
well.
stripes like
It's-
you can stripe it with your foot.
Yeah. So,
Ask
no.
Simon Rice.
Anytime we get ryegrass looking good, I just come inside and I go, babe, lawn's movie quality. Because it just looks like something from like a movie.
Yeah.
Like those streets of like kids riding down the street with these big trees and like this lush dark green grass. It's the
Home
only-
Alone.
Yeah, it's classic. Yeah.
What's your favourite, Gibbo?
Mm-hmm.
That's why I got you. Well, you said you got a favourite. What's yours? You actually didn't give us. Oh, right.
Yeah.
Right, yeah. And you are.
I'm very, very impartial to Queensland Blue Cooch.
Mm.
It's just an oldie but a goodie. I think I'm fascinated by it, just its history and when you go around in this region, I'm fascinated by its disease tolerance for one, and I'm fascinated by how it can just grow on anything. And there are so many different genotypes. It's so variable. Aussie Blues is like another bloody interesting thing. Like no breeding's been done in that field. Not a lot of herbicide tolerance work, but I actually think like if they did more work or we put more money into it, we could have one of the best lawn grasses in Australia. We just probably need to.
I'm the same. I obviously just grew up with it on my parents' place and out in Toowong when we were kids, just natural Queensland Blue. You could get awesome results. But after going to the ASTMA conference and seeing that Primo's Zoysia,
Oh, you fell in
I'm
love.
sorry, that's like
Well,
unbelievable.
You could put it in a greener that day. We'll get the sprigs going.
That's right.
I would think of the warm season grasses, nothing stripes like Queensland Blue.
No.
Yeah,
It stripes like absolute
It's-
mongrel. It's unbelievable.
something.
Ask Gary.
Ask Gary.
Yeah,
No,
he's-
don't ask Gary. You'll get some long-winded dribble. that
But
you
there's a
can't
lot of
understand.
things that fascinate me about it, like its allelopathy, like the fact
Yeah,
that it
yeah.
can like naturally resist weeds, puts out a toxin. So, and then it does make me wonder, like I've read a couple of papers where they look for like endophyte enhancement. I reckon there would be a lot of strains of blue that have like endophyte enhancement. I.e. my dad's lawn, he has not now sprayed for lawn grubs for like 20 years, still fertilises it and just leaves it, and he'll get minor damage, but it will never get out of hand. Like it'll always just be like a few patches and then it'll just recover.
This is also coming from Will the other day where I had a tiny bit of Mullumbimby cooch and he takes me over to it and he's like, smell this. He goes, this is the best smelling grass there is. He goes, it smells like lemons.
Did it smell like
It
lemon?
did, I couldn't believe it. I thought he was trying to stitch me up that it was going to be real bad.
Do you remember that pitch in Singapore? It was like 90% sedge.
That's it, yeah.
And probably like 40 of it was Mullumbimby cooch or yellow nut sedge. And you'd just mow it and it just smelled like fresh laundry or something.
So good.
My favourite, I think just for its versatility and probably green cooch, one of the green cooches.
Classic.
But
What kind
but
of-
I've got nothing
What
against.
cultivar?
Oh, Not
Deep end.
not latitude.
Yeah.
Not latitude 36. I'm over that. I think I'm sort of leaning towards Tip Tuff at the moment because it just you see it around and it just always looks. You go to get Craig's place and
I've seen Tiff Tuff lawns that just
There's some
get
great
nothing.
Tiff Tuff on
Like
there.
it really does not get looked after. It gets mown maybe once every couple of weeks, and then it just looks good. Like it's rare there's a couch that looks that good for that lack of effort. So
Just
and the drought stress that it's
drought stress. You
tolerance.
don't need to feed it much.
yeah,
I like it.
What mower does Michelle use?
It's got a new dog.
That's right.
Yeah. No, I just have what is it? It's a bush ranger. Is what I have
Cylinder
now.
or rotary?
A cylinder, rotary.
Yep.
Helicopter. Yeah.
right on
Yeah.
or push.
No, bush. I like
Bush.
it. It takes me like to do all and a double cart. Like I'm probably out there for at least a good two,
Wow,
two whatever. Yeah,
decent.
two. Sometimes even
Petrol
3
or battery?
hours. Petrol.
Do you mow without a catcher on?
No.
No.
No. No. There are certain, I
couldn't-
suppose certain
couldn't
times
do it.
that I like when I've like finished mowing and like I'll go like in one direction or go from the back of the house all the way, make round to the front, empty the catcher and then I'll go back the other way and just that second cut it just.
Yeah.
It's just perfect, and
Yeah.
any little bits of grass or whatever, because then
It sucks it up.
yeah,
It's
it's just so clean. It's so nice, and then you sit on the back deck and you look.
Are you gonna get? Are you in the market for a real mower?
Yeah.
Yeah. What are you
Yeah.
chasing?
My must no.
Yeah.
I don't really know. Like
She was eyeing off mine.
Yeah.
before.
the like that what is it? The Super Swift.
Yeah, they're
think,
quite
Yeah,
good,
yeah.
eh?
I think they are
And the
pretty
Cox
good.
mowers as well. 4-year
Yeah.
warranty.
I like
I love them.
and I like that they're like the real steel. Like and the catches.
Got a bit of weight to them.
Yeah, and that's and so with the different grasses, you want a heavier mower because you don't want one with where they sort of float a little
No.
bit more
Some of
because
those
you end up with
cassette
chattering and all
mowers
sorts.
are so light, and they just they're not warm season grass mowers.
No.
Like, yeah,
We've got rid of that problem.
yeah.
She needs a 0-turn. Fraser reckons 3250D.
Oh, is that what he's got for sale?
I think that's the one he's got for sale.
Oh, it's a Greenspan. Yeah.
Oh no, that's a 3250. Yeah.
Yeah, 3250D.
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
That's
yeah.
You've got Triflex.
Yeah.
Sorry, Triflex.
I'd end up with a whole heap of other people on the island wanted
Yeah.
I'll just go for a drive around the island.
That's right.
So Henry's just laid Empire Zoysia on straight USGA sand. He's wondering if he's top dressing with sand for his levels, will he strictly requiring nutrients from fertilisers from here on? Yes. I think he's saying that he would be relying on nutrients from soil, but because he's gone sand.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But not heaps of.
absolutely- Yeah,
But not heaps.
you won't need a lot, but use a good, like controlled release fertilizer. Because you've got sand, it's got, like unless you put, any, even putting it, like organic matter, like in it, it still takes quite a while to, to build that up to.
Especially
that
through
point.
renovations, because like there's just the amount you're pulling out. Like I don't know what size times, but you might be pulling 3-4% high volume out, or it might be even 6 or 7%. But that's only 6 or 7% of your entire lawn.
Yeah.
And you might only be amending with something that's like 10% organics with sand or something. So you're only making a net gain of like 1% organic matter by soil volume. So it could take you 10 years to get to something that's like worthwhile. So yeah, you will have to use good quality fertilizers.
Granular fertiliser
Yep.
would be better than liquids
Yeah.
for a sand profile. What's the soil profile like on the island, Michelle?
We were talking about that
We
before.
were talking about
We're
that
talking this
before.
before the stream.
It changes so much. So geographically, I'm on the highest point on the island, and I have a sandy loam.
Yeah.
It's great. I go down the sort of front, say the eastern side of the island where we sort of, and it is called Red Rock, and it's extremely red. Like everyone's saying, everyone's white dogs. Like a red, and it stains, and it's clayey, and then you go for like more over, like towards the east.
Yep.
And it's sand dunes, like now built on with houses, but it was sand dunes before, and very deep and thick, so it changes a lot over the island.
Sorry, Ben Cameron is cracking me up. So is Michelle getting a charter back to the island tonight, or is she just going to surf with Molly until the next boat tomorrow?
I have Coochie Uber, so I have a friend who I'll call, and then he just flies me backwards and forwards in a tinny.
So that's unreal.
How good.
Helicopter.
Yeah.
Goes up to the top of Mount Gravatt, up to the mountain. That shuts
if
at
I
9
had a
o'clock up there
helicopter,
now.
I'd be charging more than 180
No canoodling. Because there's heaps of carpet grass up there, and they're just trying to stop people stealing it.
That's why, yeah.
Henry,
Mount
all
Gravatt,
these,
they shut
all
it
these
at 9
people
o'clock
with
now.
pro pluggers now.
Thanks to many helicopters, he helped set me up.
He set you up, or I bet he did.
He set all of us up.
No, you've gone right there. Manny does
Shout
a good
out
job.
to Manny.
He does a bloody good job. I still got his mower there. Oh, it's his friend's mower. He's got to come and pick it up.
Yeah, you held it ransom while he had your car.
I got my car back, so he can have his mower back. Just needs a backlap.
Yep.
That's ready to go.
Do that too.
Yes. All right. Well, we might wind it up for the night. We've gone overtime, but that was always to be expected.
There's still 45 people watching. Unbelievably good.
Well, if you got a question, we
if you got some questions, we'll give it 5 more minutes.
And it
pretty
doesn't,
quiet there,
it doesn't need to be turf related. It can be, I don't know, awesome guys.
Oh, actually, that's what I was going to ask.
Here we go.
Mowing playlist. Do you listen to music while you mow, or just music? What kind of music you into?
Briggs and Stratton or Honda?
Yeah.
Lonson.
I normally I have with it a Sonos system, so I don't wear earplugs at all because I rather to listen, but I do crank the music up, and that's sort of why like all through the house. So
How good.
everywhere I go, it comes out. All
Leave the
through
windows open so it comes past.
Everywhere, yeah.
What's on the playlist musically?
I like what is it? Was it Laney? Lany?
Yeah.
I quite like that. There was a new one that I downloaded the other day by Radiohead.
Oh
which was
yeah, the
cool.
new
I had
Radiohead.
and
Wow.
another one by who was the old one? Was it Coldplay?
Oh
They
yeah.
knew something or
Yeah,
other
they're gonna use
circles.
something.
Yeah.
ABBA's new album's out.
I did see that, but
The War on Drugs having a new album out. That's a bloody.
London Grammar have a really good new song out. It's bloody good.
Okay.
Yeah. Sorry, Lenny.
Yeah.
It's not Tool.
No. Yeah.
It's not.
No, well, it's 13 years until the next Tool
That's
album,
right.
probably. Probably in their 80s. Manny pipes up and says that we're lost. Someone says, what's the best fertiliser, Lawn Pride 2-spec or ICL? I mean, that's your personal choice.
Yeah.
well, and as I've said before, like a fertilizer can be as good, as the situation in which it's used in. So, like this year, I'm using the what was it, the Pro Turf.
Yep.
Yeah.
But because I had my calcium to magnesium ratio, I didn't need calcium last year. This time I had a fairly big magnesium requirement. I didn't need that fertilizer.
Yeah.
So, but now it's suitable. So last year I was using, what did I use? Last year I used the Anderson stuff
Yeah.
because it had no magnesium, whatever in it. So I had the starter and I had the high K, and I went through the year with that. This year it's a different situation. Things are a lot more balanced in the soil, so I've gone with that, and I've gone with, and I also want to sort of fine tune it a little bit more, like I sort of recommend with other, other people. So I got that, ICL silk.
Is that the one with the stuff you grew the Ryan? Is that the silk?
No,
that's
Pearl.
That's Pearl.
Oh, right.
Yeah, at the conference I grew ryegrass in fertiliser prills.
Yeah.
And we have this new slow release phosphorus, so it's not water soluble, it's pH. So at a really high pH, it obviously it doesn't break down. So and just water, what is it? Be lucky if you can dissolve 0.2 of a gram per litre of water in it.
Oh wow.
And so you can basically just set up a soil profile of it and then grow seed straight into it and just water
It was amazing to watch.
it.
And it won't kill it. So probably Clifford, this fertiliser would be based on your soil test.
Yeah.
Would be
And soil type as well. We had
There's many ferts out there.
USGA soil question before, or sand question before. Like really free draining environment, probably no cation exchange, so you probably want to use a controlled release in that scenario because it's going to last a really long period of time.
Yeah.
Or a slow release.
How many
And a
renos
lot
have
of
we
them
done this
actually,
season?
when I'm like doing the program, you know, like, and I tend to choose, you know, like from say 4 different, say fertilizer suppliers. So Lawn Pride's predominantly, you know, like it's that UMAX technology, you know, like with dicyandiamide, so it controlled releases the nitrogen, but the potassium source is generally always potassium chloride.
Yep.
There's only one of them which I think is maintained that's got iron in it as a trace.
Yep.
2-spec, that's always not suitable for a lot of mine because every single one of them have got calcium in them.
Yep.
And not everybody needs calcium,
Yep.
and they've all got either 2 to 5, you know, like percent iron, and they have got manganese. But I find, particularly for zoysias as well, is a lot of those fertilizers, they're too high in nitrogen. Being 23 or 30 or something like that, you know, like, and when there's lucky to be like 40%, you know, like that's actually controlled release, it's far too high.
That's why I think that one there is so suitable to like low nutrient use because it's 4 to 5 months. Even though the analysis is 24, it's going to deliver at whatever rate you put out for 4 to 5 months. So you're not actually putting a lot of nitrogen on.
Yeah.
So like the more coated a fertilizer is, or the more percentage of coated fertilizer in the bag, generally the lower the analysis becomes. And so like, yeah, you can get away with less is more kind of concept.
Yeah.
There's 2 last questions.
So we'll go with just quickly, how many renos have I done? Not as many as I did last year because I do 4 days a week at a golf course now. So I do Tuesdays and Saturdays renos instead of everyday renos.
Round the clock, 24/7 renos.
So nowhere near as many, and I'm happy with that decision. Hardest variety for a large dog, tip tough. But that depends on... but that...
Shocker. Gary, he's a shocker.
That depends on what your lawn looks like what the area you're putting it. The area you're putting it, so you might have a variety that's better suited, like a buffalo might suit your area better.
I think probably a Kai or a Cooch is pretty good for dogs.
I think Tip Tough is the way that I'm going to go with mine because A, it also repairs, you know, like really fast.
Yeah.
Super quick.
Yeah.
Nadeem just logged in.
Late.
Making Michelle work overtime tonight.
Any tips? What's this? Any tips to improve Queensland blue germination? Yes, there are. It's all about water. It's all about keeping moisture around the seed.
Yeah.
So if you can put your seed out, or if you prepare your seed bed, rake reels, get the seed down, and then cross rake to get the good coverage, and you only want 5-6 mil of coverage of soil, or if you've got like you can like lightly top dress over the top of it and then roll it.
Do the shake.
That will improve your germination out of sight because I've just done that.
And it's absolutely critical that the moment, you know, like that initially you keep it sort of quite wet, but there's no point, you know, like watering for like 15 minutes because there's nothing there. So you want lots of really short irrigations.
The top 3-4 centimeters.
Yeah, literally so that the seed can, you know, swells and imbibes and sets out that little, you know, like coleoptile. Once that goes down, then it's more crucial that you keep, you know, like that water up because it's super vulnerable once it's germinated. If you cut it back already too soon, it'll just shrivel up and die.
I was going, not every tap time I can do it, but I was going 3 minutes every hour, 11 times a day. I was starting at 7 and finishing at 6. And it's just like, you just come up for a bit, go down, and I just kept checking to see like that there wasn't surface water, but it was just enough to keep that immediate surface moist.
Yeah.
Verstappen, not Hamilton.
What?
Verstappen or Hamilton for the championship.
Oh, Verstappen.
I think Verstappen because he's taken engine penalties early. Hamilton has really not taken one yet, so he's due a few. Thoughts on Easy Flow? Yep. Use it. It's good.
Great product.
He's 4 weeks post the full reno of his Tip Tough, which had some perennial ryegrass in it as I put down. Oh, the same one I put down.
Still hanging around.
He didn't chemically remove the rye. It's still hanging around. 20% blotchy. Is it true the weather in Brisbane will eventually get rid of the rye? Pretty much.
Pretty much.
I didn't spray out my
it out
footpath.
a little bit. Your Tip Tough will be alright because
Drought and
that'll
cut it
handle
low.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Don't water. You don't need to water this week, but just don't water it for a week or two.
Yeah.
It'll probably last 3 or 4 weeks without water, and
Yeah.
the rye will die.
It'll start going all patchy.
Mine's looking pretty ordinary out front. I didn't spray out my footpath with rye, the rye footpath. Man, it's still there, but it's ordinary.
Doesn't look
It
right.
hangs in the shade. You could probably take rye through shade in Brisbane if you wanted to. It'd just be
Well, that's the
Yeah.
areas in my fire pit where it's, like it's still looking fine.
yeah.
The bits where it was getting, like at least sort of 3-4 hours sun, and midday sun.
Cooks it.
It started to go patchy, but sort of looking like it
Yeah.
had almost lawn grub, but I knew it wasn't because it had accelerant. But
How often do you need to put down slow release? For 8 or 12 weeks. Tells you on the bag, mate.
It
They're all designed differently.
Depends which one that you've got.
Right.
Some of
Yeah.
some
I
of
just
them are
asked, I said,
6 weeks.
what
some
type
are
of slow
8,
release
some
we
are 3.
talking?
Yeah.
Some are 3-4 months. Others are now, like
4 to
your
5.
ICLs. Yeah, 4-5.
It usually tells you on the bag.
Yep.
No, Manny, we can't have Michelle every week because she's a bloody island hopper. She's welcome every
That's
fortnight, not every session. Every fortnight, the door's always open. Anytime Michelle wants to come over, she's more than welcome.
Yep.
The other two exercise
He's a
blokes,
shocker.
pedal as the other team talk.
Gary.
Gary's going to get himself banned again.
Again.
It's anti-social behaviour on Facebook.
Antisocial behaviour. All right, we'll wind it up there. Thank you very much for tuning in.
Go over the Fanatics helpers / discount codes before we wrap up.
Yep, so those who have supported the Fanatics for a long time, you see down the front, we've got Plant Doctor, Lawn Care Supplies help us, will help you with discount codes, and also...
Lawn Hub.
No, not Lawn Hub.
Water Pro.
Water Pro.
Water
He doesn't have enough.
And then the
profit
other thing
margin as a
is,
discount.
is Michelle does
And
unlimited
Michelle.
soil tests.
Yeah.
Also,
So-
I've seen some photos coming through of the prize packs on Instagram that we gave away.
Yeah.
I saw a couple of them post the other day. Look mint on a good lawn with a good photo. We'll
Yeah.
have to post one on the page.
Yeah.
So thanks again to Clint for knocking those out so fast. It's bloody awesome prizes.
Yeah. So the discount code you'll see around the place is AUSLF, capital letters. So enjoy the next fortnight. Reno hard, Reno fast, do it low and hard, and enjoy your time in the turn.
Oh, I'm going to have to shut it down, aren't I?
Yeah, you're going to do the walk of shame.
Oh, it's not the first, won't be the last.